Welcome back to John's Briefs, here again with Terry Johnson from Firearms Legal Protection. As always, Terry, man, I'm so grateful that you invest in helping us learn to get better as self-defenders.
John, it's truly my pleasure. It's a great opportunity, especially to sit down with you and your friends at ASP, and I wouldn't miss it for the world.
I gotta say, I think it's crazy that these will get a few thousand views, and I think the best legal education in moral and legal use of force that exists, and I wish more people watched them. So share them with your friends, would you? Today, I want to talk about, we had a video on the channel of a thief using pepper spray on a loss prevention guy. So dude decided he snagged a couple of iPhones, runs out, loss prevention guy gets in his way, they get in a tussle, dude pulls out a knife and an OC spray and hoses him down. But the aspect of that I want to talk about with Terry, our attorney, is whether or not we can do that and detain a thief who's attempting to flee. Today's video is brought to us by Firearms Legal Protection. Firearms Legal Protection is a legal defense program for lawful gun owners with a 24/7 emergency hotline and plans designed specifically for self-defenders. They are offering a discount on their plan to ASP fans, so hit the link in the description for that. Also want to say thanks to Wilderness Tactical for letting us have the space here to do some of these. Always appreciate their support on the channel as well. So let's talk about this. So this guy comes in, and I think I talked about it on the tactical level, right?
Yes.
Of whether it's smart to do this kind of stuff. So dude's gonna run off with a couple of iPhone 11s, and he's got 2,500 bucks worth of iPhones in his bag or whatever. And our guy starts tussling with him, and out comes a knife and a pepper spray. He ends up using the pepper spray, thankfully, instead of the knife.
Right.
Loss prevention guy runs off, and he gets away with his stuff. I don't even know if they ever caught him as far as when I did the video they hadn't. So, but talk to me about the legalities of detaining somebody who is stealing.
Great question. In most states, there's this thing called a shopkeeper's rule. What that is basically if someone comes in and they start to steal something, or they get past a certain point within the store, you can detain them. Now, that's pretty much it. You can detain them. That doesn't mean you get to use lethal force on someone.
Certainly.
That doesn't mean that you get to beat the hell out of them.
But detention is physical force.
Depends on where you are. Let me give you an example. I can say, hey, stop, don't go anywhere. I've just detained you.
Okay.
Police officers do it all the time. It's not necessarily physical force.
Okay, so a detention is force, but it's maybe not even physical force.
Correct.
So I am imposing my will on you.
I've actually seized you. And
Yes.
what I mean by that is I now have control over you. Now, that control could just be me saying, don't move. That control could be me at the high end using a firearm, pointing it at you saying, don't move. So either way, you're seized.
And obviously in this case, the guy starts running out, and the LP guy doesn't, start with verbals. He grabs a hold of the guy. So at what point am I legally and morally justified to use physical force?
Well, again, he runs out, and as I remember, he gets past the entryway there. You go in Best Buy, you've got the first set of doors and then the second set. So he gets outside, and at that point, I believe he's outside the store.
Yep.
The shopkeeper in this case can attempt to stop him, but with what force? Because now using that, you use pepper spray or anything else, or even physical force, you now open yourself up for potential criminal and civil liability.
So it seemed to me he was trying to grab the guy's bag. My stuff is in there, right? And I think it's common sense that he should have the right to do that. Look, I know from a legislative perspective, at least here in Arizona, that it says, listen, to stop the theft of property, that it's reasonable to use physical force to stop property, but not deadly force unless there's loss of life that is imminent.
Sure.
So that seems to be the reasonable standard, right? I can use the reasonable amount of force necessary to keep somebody from stealing my stuff.
So let me ask this. What if the shopkeeper had broken the perpetrator's arm?
That starts to be, is that reasonable?
What if
Yeah, what if he breaks his nose by punching him in the face?
What if he threw him to the ground and he broke his collarbone or something at that point? So now it gets into this whole gray area because, again, if I'm the perpetrator, first thing I'm thinking of is I think I might just sue these people.
Yeah, and that's so now we got a civil thing on our hands. Now, I think from a criminal perspective, even from a civil perspective, well, you don't want to get your shoulder broken? Don't steal other people's stuff, right? You know,
Correct.
And I think hopefully as a
Correct.
society, we say, well, if you didn't want those consequences, then you shouldn't have taken things to begin with. And when he said, no, you can't do that, you should have given it back and gone about your merry way and get a job, you loser.
I agree with you, but let's look at how our society is. I mean, ever go to McDonald's and say, hey, give me a cup of hot coffee?
Yeah.
Is it too hot? What's too hot? You know?
And that's why, remember, behind every stupid sign, there's an idiot, right? You know, caution, hot coffee. Of course it's hot coffee. That's what I asked for gracious sake.
Exactly. I mean, in this case, if it were me, I would be very cautious. I would try and stop the person, maybe not with physical force. That's probably why I'm, not in security. But,
Right.
As they run away, let them go away. Because again, I don't know what this perpetrator has. I don't know if he's got a knife, a gun. If you're willing to come into a store and steal $2,500 worth of iPhones, you're probably willing to do anything else to me to get away or what have you.
Well, and so, I mean, obviously, from a tactical perspective, I think that makes good sense. You know, am I willing to get knifed over an iPhone? I'm not, personally.
I'm not either, yeah.
So that seems silly. But from a legal perspective, can you reasonably use force? It depends on the jurisdiction you're in and what they expect. What about as a bystander? Does that change when you're not the shopkeeper?
It actually does, quite honestly, because again, you have no duty to do anything. You haven't been empowered to do anything. So if someone's running down the street and I hear, hey, stop, they just stole these iPhones. Now the question becomes, are they a fleeing felon? Because someone out here is going to say, well, they're a fleeing felon, I get to use force.
All right, you Texans, Texas Penal Code 9.42 exists, and it's weird and it's unique, I get it.
Yeah, don't get me going with that one. But the question becomes, at what level do you get involved?
Right.
Because again, it's property. And you mentioned Texas, one thing in Texas, and I hear this all the time about using lethal force to protect property. Very few states allow that. In Texas, you can. However, there's a big however with the state of Texas.
Be very careful.
Be careful because if the property is being taken, it has to be something that cannot be replaced.
It cannot be recovered by other means.
And for example, if you steal my great-grandmother's ashes and you're running down the street, that might be an example of when I can use lethal force.
So be
in
careful.
Texas. Yes.
So I guess where it boils down to is, do you have some rights to use physical force to defend your property? You do, and it depends on the state. But be cautious, because guess what? That doesn't protect you from civil actions. And do people bring goofy civil actions all the time? And can you get punished with that process? Yeah, I think you can.
It becomes expensive, and what happens? Someone looks at this and says, oh, this is stupid. They throw the summons and complaint away, and next thing you know, they're in debt for about $50,000 because they never answered.
They never answered it, yeah. And so in my opinion, if you're in loss prevention, if you are in, even this as the shopkeeper, far better to prevent these kinds of things than have a wrestling contest with a perp over an iPhone. From a tactical perspective, and even from a civil liability perspective, if you were to break his arm or something like that, you could be in trouble. So, Terry, appreciate the knowledge.
Thank you.